Married women of Reddit, what was it that your husband did that made you realize he's the one? Nothing at all. I remember sitting with him in the car, he was driving and it was quiet. I looked over and had a feeling of peace, calm, a feeling of home. And that was when I knew we were going to be together forever. Another moment that solidified my feelings. We were engaged and had a fight, a huge fight, and I stormed out, got in my car, and drove off. As I was driving, I thought of people/friends I could go to tell what had happened and how I was feeling. As I went through my list, I came to the realization that the person I wanted to talk to the most was my best friend, and he was the person I had just left. We have been married now for 25 years. Our looks have faded, we get on each other's nerves, but he is still my best friend and I can't imagine a world without him right by my side. About 2 months into dating, we'd gotten to the point where we would just visit each other's apartments randomly. He comes over to visit, but unfortunately, I was stuck on the toilet with a urinary tract infection. Honestly, I felt like I had to pee all day and just could not leave the bathroom. I embarrassingly explained this to him through the bathroom door, and he says, "No problem, hold on a minute." He slowly opens the door with his eyes closed, a stool in one hand and his laptop in another. He sets his laptop on the sink opposite me and the stool into my shower, which was divided from the toilet by a closet, so we could both see the laptop, but not each other. Then he sat down, and we watched Happy Feet together while I was on the toilet the whole time. I nearly cried. He was kind to a homeless man, knew his name, and the man knew his. We will be married 20 years next week. Friday night on our way home from dinner, waiting at a red light, a homeless man who has been frequenting the intersection did a little dance and flashed us the peace sign. My husband rolled down his window and handed his to-go box out to him. There was an untouched, beautiful hamburger in that to-go box, which he was looking very forward to eating later on. And I thought, 20 years later, perfect. He is still perfect. He went on a 3-day road trip with a friend and I was in abject misery the entire time. I distinctly remember wandering into my kitchen, opening the fridge for the 1000th time that day, and just staring into it thinking, what the fuck is wrong with me? Oh my God, I love him. He got back from his trip at around 1 a.m., called me, and immediately got right back in his car and drove to my house. I confessed my realization, he said. It's about time, and we've been together ever since. That was August 99, and we married in October 01. We had been dating on and off for almost a year. I am a huge bookworm and wanted to go to a book reading on Halloween by one of my favorite authors but couldn't think of anyone who would want to go. He immediately jumped at the chance, got really dressed up, took me out before for dinner, then drove me to the book reading. He loved the reading even though he never read a book by the author before. I could tell he was so happy to be there. Then he insisted we stay after to get a book signed no matter how long it took, and we were almost at the end of the line so it took about 2 hours. When we finally got to meet the author he complimented my now husband for dressing so nicely and in my book wrote, "I envy you." He's gay, by the way. We've now been together 5 years, 2 married, and have a baby on the way. We like to joke that it was his approval that sealed the deal. But the whole night made me realize how exceptionally thoughtful he was and how happy he was just to be with me. That's when I knew how lucky I was to have him and I wasn't letting go. The author's approval was the cherry on top. He took me to an outdoor concert when we hadn't been dating long. It was a hot day and I was dehydrated so I passed out. He picked me up and carried me through the crowd to the first aid tent. I woke up while he was carrying me and realized that I had fallen in love with a superhero who would always be there to protect me. 5 years later he's emigrated to another country for me, and we're happily married. He had a cork on a string tied up in a doorway as a toy for his cat. It was a very cute cat that would wait outside the house for him to return from work, and would follow him down the road to the shops. That cat really loved him, and they are good judges of character. I figured someone who treated his cat right would treat me right. 20 years on, and on cat no 3, and I have been proved right every day. Plus he snogged like a king on our first date. The first time he met my family, we were at a lake house. I went to take my dog out in the yard and I unknowingly walked into a massive ground bee nest with my pup. They got in my dress/bathing suit and were all in my dog's fur. I ran screaming into the house with my dog, both of us covered in bees, and brought dozens of bees into the house with me. He ripped all of the bees out of my dog's fur, helped my mom kill all of the bees I brought into the house with me while I was literally running around screaming and ripping my clothes off, and then retrieved my purse that I dropped near the nest, which had so many bees on it you could barely see the actual material of my bag. That was one of the most terrifying moments of my life so far, because bees. In my bathing suit. But I remember being so shocked that someone I had not been dating that long was caring enough to battle a shit ton of bees for me. Growing up, I didn't have the best example of love, as my parents fought a lot and weren't very lovey-dovey. But when I met my biological father at the age of 16, he really set a standard. I remember sitting on his back patio with him and his wife. They were holding hands and just enjoying their evening, when he looked at her and said, "Have I told you I love you today?" She responded, "No, I don't think so," to which he said, "Oh, I will. By the end of the day I'll let you know." Damn, it was simple but so cute. He later explained it was a twist on a movie quote, but one he always really liked. They did little things like that a lot, and I knew in that particular moment that I wanted that same treatment. Sure enough, one day my now husband and I were sitting together, just relaxing with a movie, and he says, "Have I told you how much I love you today?" I smiled and said, "No, not yet," and had tears in my eyes. He was, of course, confused, and I explained what had me so taken aback. I had never told him that story before. I knew right then that I didn't want to spend my life with anyone else. I had found what I was looking for. I had two moments when I knew. The first was when we sat down together on a park bench in the sunshine, and I fell asleep leaning on his shoulder. It was important to me because I usually can't fall asleep anywhere but my own bed. I realized that I'd never been that comfortable with anyone before in my life. The second moment came a few months later. I had fallen pregnant due to a contraceptive failure. I told him that I didn't expect him to stick with me because I don't think that relationships built on necessity are fair to anyone. But he did stick with me. And when I was 12 weeks pregnant, I started to bleed. Not much, but enough for a panicked phone call to the maternity hospital. The bleeding wasn't heavy enough to be considered an emergency, particularly since there was no pain and it was so early in the pregnancy. But I needed an ultrasound to find out what was going on. Just one problem. I started to bleed in the evening and the ultrasound operators had all gone home already. I had to wait overnight to find out if the baby that I still wasn't sure I wanted was still alive. It was the longest night of my life, but he was there for me. Through the weeping and the guilt and the panicking and the fear, he just held me and kept saying that one way or another it would all be all right. The next day he came with me to the hospital, even though he's terrified of hospitals. And he was by my side when they told me that there was absolutely nothing wrong, just like in roughly 90% of cases of light bleeding in pregnancy. I knew then. Someone who will be there for you even when there's absolutely nothing they can do except for hold you is worth holding on to. That was in 2002. We got married in 2008. We have 2 kids and he's still the one. Do you have a similar story? Leave a comment and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more videos like this one.